Okay, part two of my ramblings for this evening. It's still the 5th of June, 2026. It's 7:15 at night, West Coast time. Weaver, John C. Roseman, California. Diary of the Griever, me, John Weaver, which is me. So enough said on that shit. Okay, what I was about to tell you about the data centers out there. They're main computers. They're massive computers, computer center. If you guys have grown up in the 60s, maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents had told you about when the computers were big, bulky, vacuum tubed monstrosities that produced a little bit of data compared to what we deal with today. They took on a lot of energy. They needed a lot of water to cool things off a bit. A lot of fan usage. Because when you run electronics long and hard, they do generate energy. They do generate heat energy. You guys have dealt with not just punch cards, but the main monsters that you had to plug into in the 60s and 70s. You ever felt how they tried to keep the rooms cold? Because the electricity going into the machines, into the circuit boards, were heating things up, especially when the processors were working at overtime. Oh, just regular. And then you go into what 70s and 80s, and you see what they call the mainframes, big boxy mothers. Well, the big computer CRT screen, heavy. And you got picture diodes in there and electricity in there running through the capacitors and electrical things in there. I'm not an electrician. I couldn't even tell you what that is, but the heat generated with all the electrical parts going. You needed a place for ventilation, as well as the ventilation for the computer, which means you had to have an air conditioner running 24/7 if you were doing an operation 24/7 with that damn monster. I remember when I was working at a job, working with one guy, and then had to work with my mother at the same job. Weston Ladders, God rest his soul, Burt Weston. Guy was a World War II survivor. Built a signage company out of a machine shop that made bomb and artillery shot things out in West Hollywood. He converted it into a signage place, custom made signs, and he built and sold, made a business out of it. Struggling, but it was still workable. Had a family into the business, had a lot of people getting into it. 20 the last time I was checking. I was back in the 80s. Ma had gotten an application right after our grandmother's death, and she needed to work to continue the rent and everything else going on in the household. So Ma had a job over at West Palm Letters as an accountant controller. I already seen what computers looked like, the smaller ones, and what a computer lab had when they actually had the mini computers coming out, and they actually had the computers like the Atari 800 and the Apple IIe, not to mention the Trash 80, the TRS 80 from Radio Shack. That's a Tandy Corporation, but we call it trash because that's it was a good okay computer. It was the only one hooked up to a network outside of the internet or to the World Wide Web. They would play online games in a computer lab. But the lab was also for people, actually for the kids to develop their computer skills, how to program in BASIC, I'm not quite sure about Cobalt or Fortran. But even in there, they had the air conditioning on because all those computers running at that time back in the 80s, it was heat. Be cold outside. You go into the computer lab and you took your jacket off, and then you hope to God you had a soda or a bottle of water with you. But you had to keep the water away from the computers. Remember when I was in my mother's counting room, how hot it was in there. The air conditioner had to be running constantly because of the heat generated from that computer. These days, we have our laptops, we have our desktops, and we have to have fans for those things. And even even with the laps, we have to have underneath fans using the computer as the power to cool off the computer underneath, because underneath it would be hot as hell. These computers can overheat. If they're used on a constant basis, they will overheat. And then once you fry them out, they're no damn good after that. You would have to replace a lot of a lot of computer components. I have to keep turning off my computer every so often to keep it from overheating. I have to keep a status on it just so the thing can still work. Even phones will do the same thing. If you overheat the battery, if it's not on a slow charge, you'll overload actually the lithium battery if you got it to where it's going to explode. You check up on those safety records. I'll tell you something. Sometimes you have to turn off the phone to heat it to cool it off. During the heat of the summer, electronics can overheat. Now, all this information I've just given you concerning about electronics, multiply it into a huge complex. A huge complex. Because this complex is those data centers. It's similar to what we have the clouds. The clouds are also data centers in themselves, but they store our stuff in it. But they're not artificial intelligence. They're basic storage, and even they eat up resources. So if I'm storing stuff, I'm usually spending money on a constant basis to make sure that I've got something to work with. That I don't have to send it to somewhere electronic in the sky for that one. The artificial intelligence data centers out there require massive amount of electricity being poured through the lines, and not to mention the underground water systems or wherever they're getting the water to cool off the electrics. They run them through pipes, and the pipes they're running it into the I don't even know what the mechanics is. All I know is they're trying to get rid of the heat in the data center. If the heat is still in there, they have to run water through it, which will basically suck out the heat and carry the heat outwards away from the machines. And then unfortunately they become non-drinkable, not recyclable wastewater. There are towns and counties fighting, maybe several states too, in the courts. We don't want this shit happening. This is part of the price that we're paying for the billionaires who want everything, wasting everything around them just to get the instant buck. But what happens if everything's gone? Now what do you do? Think about that one, guys. That being said.